Alright, welcome back everyone. The next part of this Let's Play in history. Ugh. Cap, what is going on?
Lovecraft, Crowley, transcendental magic, conquest through technology and mysticism by Victor Von Doom. Guessing this library doesn't carry the Hardy Boys. I am unfamiliar with their work. I brought you here
I am a
to
big
salute
fan
you
of
with
Cap.
your roots.
I think they did him right and did him justice in this game.
Where you came from and where you can go, and more importantly,
But no, we're here to talk about Calvin Coolidge. That's what we're here to do. Now, last time I talked, he was the governor. He
so where do you see
basically quashed a Boston police strike. Actually physically took over himself. Fired pretty much every single police officers. City was in chaos, by the way. A lot of people were very scared. The height of the Red Scare, mind you, in around 1918, 1919. And there's many other reasons, to be quite honest. I think it also aids the fact, in his perspective, that, you know, the city's literally in chaos without a police force, and people were not happy about that. So it's like, you know,
Seems like you have got a lot on your mind.
You could say that.
he quashes it. A lot of people are like, "Oh, you're anti-union, you're anti-worker," and then, but a lot of people actually came to his defense and was like, "Y'all let like criminals run free like crazy and didn't do anything, so not a good look on you guys." I'll put it that way.
Okay, I really wanted to show off how I could get a sample of Venom's symbiote.
And this was actually big news, mind you. This was the thing that actually gave him a lot of national attention.
And getting it,
Um,
left poor Eddie
some people saw him as someone who was against communism. Some people saw him as, you know, I don't want to say anti-authority in a lot of ways, but I think there was a perception that, you know, he quashed this police union thing and this police strike that was going on in the Boston strikes. And, you know, they're like, all right, he's not a cop. You know what I'm saying? I think there's that perspective that kind of goes along with it.
and the symbiote wasn't
And also, ironically, someone who's like, all right, he's also a law and order bringer too. You know, this ultimately seems like a good win-win-win-win-win-win-win situation for him. Ends up getting renominated for governor again. Ends up basically just dominating. I mean, pretty much the only time he ever lost was, I think, like a very, very
Who knows? Maybe you will someday.
he only lost one particular office seat, and that was like a small little thing. It was like a state assembly procedure by like a couple hundred votes. But largely, Calvin Coolidge was just a winner, bro. A lot of people were even thinking about him becoming president around this particular point in time. He had a lot of juice. And I think he knew it too. Now, when he gets inaugurated, he's only governor basically for a month before he becomes the vice presidential candidate for... Okay. Well, let's do this. Gotta train up my peeps.
I guess I could show you a couple of things.
And then let's see if we can do some combat therapy for Peter.
Peace.
La 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 la. What's this bottom one? Oh. I honestly don't care about that one too much.
You would make a...
What's up, Tony?
Sample analysis going.
Oh, you mean the vial of demonic alien goo Peter took out of poor Eddie. That sample analysis?
That is the one.
In a word, gross. But a fascinating kind of gross. This symbiote exists as a whole at the molecular level. Every atom of it is a self-sustaining, slimy little entity in and of itself. Yet when the molecules bond, they undergo a change state that can only be described as something out of abstract expressionism, and I can see your eyes glazing over right now.
I am sure this makes sense to you, but try to remember I am not from this time. I'm still getting used to the idea of lights that turn on when you flip a switch.
Right. slow down a bit, skip the science babble, and get right to the point. I think we can use Venom's slime sample as the basis of a suit.
Like a Venom suit.
No, not like Venom. No symbiosis. It would exist as an anti-symbiote to protect you the next time you two meet. Think of it as a kind of armor. Strange and I are working on a design right now. Give me 24 hours, and I think you'll be very pleased.
The heck is a faith break? What? Cool. Damn, so I gotta do one more mission, then I gotta get then I can get the faith breaker suit. Okay. I guess we're not almost done with this game, people.
What can I say except you're welcome? Later.
Okay, might as well go do a mission while we're here. Now, he's governor for like 1 year, and he's like vetoing everything. He gives bonuses to veterans of World War One, puts into law reduction of women and child labor. Keep in mind, they're working like 60-hour weeks, and he's like, alright, I'm putting it into law, you will not work more than 45 hours a week, basically, or 48 hours a week. Because he realizes we don't want this entire system collapse because people are so pissed off that they're being so overworked, and helped increase wages all around. While also, mind you, that he also cut taxes yet again and actually paid off debts that the state had owed. It's so freaking crazy. The one veto that is very notable that a lot of people point out is he actually vetoed a bill that would have increased pay to state legislators because they were trying to increase their percentages by about 50%. I don't even know what this is, to be honest with you. Don't really care.
You have any ideas on how to keep this team from unraveling? Because I'd love to hear them. I'm at my wit's end, Hunter. Nico's on finding some spell in Wanda's
And I think a lot of people do give him crap because while he was against prohibition, he basically always voted or signed bills that went for prohibition. Although I think it's mainly because he was a strict constitutionalist, foundationally and fundamentally. Yeah, that's basically it. Now, I think around this particular point in time, during the 1920 Republican primaries, his name was thrown into the ring as a potential presidential candidate. Has a couple big speeches, and I think ends up becoming a really prominent voice. Again, the whole backroom deal kind of thing going on to get Warren G. Harding as the president is happening, and basically they were like, how do I even put it?
Thanks, Hunter.
I think, how do I put it? I have trouble believing in certain people sometimes, where it's like, oh, these people are smart, yada yada. I think a lot of these people are not very smart in politics, in life, and they make really bad assumptions and perspectives of individuals, thinking that they can control them, that they can't control them. I think if anyone has seen anything that's been going on with politics in the last 10 years, I think has really shown that. In this particular point in time, I think they wanted Calvin Coolidge. He was proposed specifically to become the vice president because I think he could be somewhat controlled, and that, you know, politicians and, you know, the big rich people who are behind everything largely could influence him. And ultimately, I think they just saw him as someone that, you know, God forbid Warren G. Harding passes away, that he's gonna be someone that will, you know, they'll be able to take advantage of. Complete misreading of Calvin Coolidge and who he was and what he represents. But ultimately, part of the whole backroom deal thing, smoke-filled rooms, you know, handshaking and whatnot. Calvin Coolidge becomes the vice presidential candidate for Warren G. Harding in the election of 1920. They win. Coolidge is basically took to the campaign trail, and I think a lot of people were reassured by his more calm demeanor and presence. And he specifically didn't take people time. He had very, very quick speeches wherever he went, like in comparison to what it is nowadays. And I think people like that. Now, I don't think Harding and Coolidge got along very well, but I think Harding, at the very least, respected Coolidge and respected his demeanor, at least to a certain degree. In fact, he's actually one of the few vice presidents to actually work very closely with the actual president, actually like participating in cabinet meetings, actually holding a real big voice and influence on Warren G. Harding, which I think helped clear Harding's perspective on a bunch of different policy issues. Again, being socially progressive, but also being very fiscally conservative. It also helped too that, again, his name is Silent Cal, and he's basically just this really chill dude who doesn't really voice his opinion unless it's absolutely necessary.
Caretaker is allowing her fear get the better of her.
Huh? Why should she be afraid of me? I'm on her side.
Because, like you said, you are a ridiculously experienced witch with ridiculously amazing powers. My guess is she fears you might follow in Wanda's footsteps if given free rein.
She's always hated her.
No, Nico, she just fears her. She fears any power she cannot control. I think it has to do with what happened to Lilith.
She thinks we're gonna end up like Lilith? What a vote of confidence.
Now, when he becomes president, it's actually a bit of a funny story. I think he was actually visiting, well, he was basically home in Vermont at this point. He had taken like a quick little break and sabbatical. It was an old home, didn't have electricity. Telephones and like telegraphs and all that stuff were becoming prominent, but he didn't have either one of them. Someone basically they drive up to his house at like 2 in the morning, and it's basically like, Calvin, the president's dead. We need you. Yep.
Awesome. Can't wait to
Yep. Okay. Let's go do a mission. Let's go fight some baddies. Yeah, we're just gonna do something easy. Something simple, something easy. But basically, he was told about it. It goes back upstairs, gets dressed, says a prayer for Warren G. Harding, and then basically gets sworn in as president by his father, by the way. His father was a public notary and justice of the peace, and in his living room with a kerosene lamp by the door, Calvin Coolidge becomes the next president of the United States. You know, that's gotta be really cool and fun to just be like I'll put it this way: if that was my son, or like, you know, like, I'd just be like, my son's the president of the United States now. It's beautiful. Immune to knockback. But Calvin Coolidge is now the President of the United States of America. He goes back to Washington, D.C. right after, immediately. And for the first year, he's basically just dealing with the fallout of Warren G. Harding's presidency, the Teapot Dome scandal, which basically he was just like, I'm going to just stay away from all that and just back up because I literally have nothing to do with this, and I'm just going to trust that the individuals will actually do what they're supposed to be doing and figure out what's true and what's not true. Take that, sucker.
Never seen that before.
Alright, so recover this, which is a bunch of credits. It's cool. Back to you. What? I thought, okay, whatever. Whatever. It's a little irritating, actually. Damn.
Glutton for punishment.
Now, Calvin Coolidge was doing a bunch of different things during the rest of Warren G. Harding's term, largely. Again, going to fiscal conservatism again. Ooh. Where's the... Ghost Rider. Basically, he just does the things that he ultimately likes to do. He ends up sweet. Do I have... Nah, I don't need that. Can we draw this card? Sure. I mean, immediately he drops tax rates like crazy. I mean, he literally just drops taxes and forces the government to actually be a competent machine to actually do what it's supposed to be doing. Is also progressive too. Gives Native Americans the right to citizenship. More war benefits for people and former soldiers coming home. Yeah, that was overkill.
Maybe you should teach me that one.
Think these guys got their tactics from the back of a magazine.
And because of that, Calvin Coolidge is a very popular president, honestly. Very prominent. Easily wins the Republican nomination. He's just too popular at this particular point in time. Although a lot of people will argue that he wasn't. I'd argue that he absolutely was. dun, 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 dun. And I think a lot of people saw the writing on the wall with Calvin Coolidge because they were effectively a lot more, let's say, hostile to him during his renomination process during the Republican convention, aggressively so. Just need one attack. One attack. I think, no, it's not enough, but still. And I understand that Democrats post World War I are trying to figure themselves out a little bit. There's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of political infighting going on. Their convention was just... You want to talk about chaos? They went through 100 ballots in order to actually figure out who the frickin' presidential nominee was going to be for the Democratic Party. I think they ended up settling on this guy, John Davis. I think he was a senator. I'm not quite positive, to be honest with you.
Just stand here with me a moment.
There was also former Republican Senator Robert La Follette, who was completely just disenfranchised with the Republican Party, seeing them as being a lot more controlling, which is fair, I'll be honest. Basically runs an independent, which a lot of people thought it was going to be more like the election of 1912 that got Woodrow Wilson in, and that Democrats would have had a shot. But the biggest fundamental problem is that two things. I think Calvin Coolidge's son passes away at this point, and I think a lot of people saw that and were sympathetic to the man. And at this point, this is the beginning of like people in politics kind of just being like, oh, this guy didn't do this, this guy didn't do that, you know. And it actually probably hurt him a little bit in some ways because he didn't want to campaign. He was just done. He was just like, yeah, whatever. Basically, what ends up happening is this actually hurt the Democrat candidate really more than anything. Death of his son and the split, or the hypothetical split of the party that was going to happen. La Follette actually took some votes away from John Davis, and Calvin Coolidge wins his first term, or his first full term. He wins the election, the first election as president, by like 380 plus electoral votes. Let's do some meditation, bruh. Sure, why not?
Let's endeavor to meet again soon.
Aw, you didn't like it. Boo. Try and do something nice for you, Doc. Okay. Going to bed.
We shall be reunited soon.
What's up, Moms? How you doing?
We're standing in front of each other right now.
Now, in his second term, or technically his first elected term as president, Calvin Coolidge oversees the Roaring Twenties. How does he get there exactly? Bunch of different reasons. Actually, well, also a big reason why Herbert Hoover is the president. He had Herbert Hoover in charge of basically businesses. He was his Secretary of Commerce, and he was basically like, we're going to do everything we can to promote big business, and not just big corporations, but just we're going to get people working. We're going to make a strong economic America, and ultimately ended up deregulating so many different things and lowered taxes like crazy. He was as laissez-faire and anti-federalism in government than as any president have ever seen, to be quite honest with you. The only things he did do that he wanted the federal government to do was improving certain technologies that they could invest in. Radio communication, broadcasting. Radio is a big thing around this particular point in time, and he's a very big individual of that. His Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Milone, was really prominent in his specific taxation ideals, and pushed forth a whole bunch of different revenue acts. The Revenue Act of 1924, basically just eliminating income tax for like 5 million people entirely. That's crazy. And he continued like 4 more times, more revenue acts to reduce taxes over and over and over and over again. Basically, anyone who was in the top 2 or 3% of income earners were the only people that paid any income tax by like 1928. I mean, you want to talk about like, I mean, he's just doing everything he possibly can. One of the few presidents I do believe that actually did reduce our federal deficit too, by the way, during his time as president. Because during his time as president, he ends up vetoing like damn near hundreds of bills that would have required government financial investment in, and basically like, no. Our federal budget, I don't think, moves the entire time that he is the president of the United States. Now, there are some good things and bad things about him. He's not perfect. He was not for farm subsidies, which is kind of something that, you know, I think is a little bit necessary in a lot of ways. What the? Let's talk, girl.
So, like, Hunter, don't let this go to your head, but I think you're okay.
You do?
Yeah.
And I think certain things
Feel included and
which don't look fondly upon him was that 2 things. Well, 3 things. He was very
you don't, so, like,
whatever about pretty much a lot of basically policy in general. So like for instance, like foreign affairs, he basically brought the United States back to its non-interventionist foreign policy. Although he thought the United States was great, obviously, he was like, we're not going to flex our muscles and do all these stupid things that are completely unnecessary. He absolutely loathed the Wilsonian or Woodrow Wilson ideals of, you know, joining the League of Nations, politics, the ideals that exuded around that time. He also was very mum on certain civil rights, despite giving Native Americans the right to vote and having, you know, black people at the White House and whatnot. He was like very just indifferent, I think, to very indifferent to civil rights. Let's just beef up Cap. Let's just go for it. And above all else, he was not for the federal government doing anything when it came to, for instance, natural disasters, which a couple things ultimately ended up happening around that particular point in time, and was pretty much just like, we're just going to let people do what, like, we're going to just let people do the thing. No food in the war room.
Hunter, what you've got there is
Whoa.
the latest in
Alright, I'm digging it.
handcrafted, magically protected personal
The Great Mississippi Flood that happens around the late 1820s was probably the biggest one. A lot of people compare it to like Hurricane Katrina in terms of the level of destruction that ultimately ended up happening because of it.
Now, just get me back to New York, and I will handle the rest.
Oh, you are gonna love this. Oh well.
What is this suit? Good lord.
Got more coil for me? Let's see what you got here. I'm pretty sure Charlie was the same coil in the hallway. Third stage. How does this look?
Keep that. Keep that. Okay. Okay. No. Whoa.
Very slick. The new armor suits you. It looks pretty spectacular.
Jealous?
Incredibly.
Ooh, I got Blade jealous.
If you like it, I can see about having straight.
It's okay,
to
Blade.
make one for
The only black man for me.
Those two, they barely kept it together long enough to make this for you.
He does everything that you could possibly want for the most part as a president. You want a real hands-off president that, you know, has people just take care of themselves, the autonomy of a human being and as an individual. You're not going to find any individual that's better than him.
It's amazing what a little teamwork can produce.
Near the end of his second term, this is around 1927,
They finally got along.
he takes a small vacation
Just hope it's
in South Dakota, and he just, as the only way Calvin Coolidge could ever just do it, he just randomly says to someone who's there, you know, I don't think I'm going to run for president again.
We should use that line on Tony.
And people were just like, wait, what? What? And then after that, people were like, oh my god, reporters were all over the place. They're like, he's not running for president?
You've got a date with the
He's pretty candid about it. He basically says
Good luck out there.
later in memoirs that he would write that I think are incredibly fair. And he basically says,
Hunter's expertise
let me
extends
talk to someone.
Rest easy.
He basically says
Dealt with the unknowable.
he's been in Washington for the better part of, you know, almost a decade, and that while he wants to serve his country, he understands the limitations of both himself, ultimately, depression, and just, you know, it takes a toll on you, and the fact that
Stranger to disembodied voices.
people need to know the limits of power to a certain degree. He chose to basically just walk away from it, and he just wanted to basically be a regular individual. Leaves office. Herbert Hoover takes his spot as the Republican presidential nominee. Wins in a landslide. Now, he and Hoover, again, are not the best of friends. I think despite Hoover's, let's say, radical ideals in terms of big business and promoting small businesses as well, I think he saw Hoover as someone a little dangerous when it comes to federal spending in a lot of ways to try and improve the country, and didn't actually endorse him very much so until like the last minute when he basically was like, Coolidge, you gotta endorse this guy, because if you don't, it's gonna fracture the party in a lot of ways. And he's like, all right, I'll endorse him. So that's it. Calvin Coolidge leaves office with one of the strongest economies his country had ever seen, in just every single way, shape, and form, despite the Federal Reserve, mind you. He just leaves. He just lives his life, goes back to Northampton, writes a memoir, writes for a newspaper actually called he had a newspaper column called Calvin Coolidge Says,
Thanks for
And after Hoover loses the Great Depression and all that, they're really pushing Calvin Coolidge again to run, but he's just like, nah, bruh, nah.
This is not the
He was
weapon.
nominated, but ultimately just he wasn't going to do it, so it was pointless to nominate him. Hoover ends up getting renominated, yada yada, and ends up just chilling. One day he wasn't feeling too good, around 1933.
I expect nothing less from
Had a small little cardiac event,
do have a single mistake
and ultimately just ends up passing away. They were not able to save him in time.
to your collar.
Died at the age of 60.
Be sure to let me know as soon as possible.
I think at that point, unfortunately for him, depression really got to him. I think he was really, really, truly just not the same man that he was at that point. Serving the country, the loss of his son that he blames himself for the rest of his life for, really took a lot out of him. And one of his famous lines that one of his close friends from Massachusetts reiterates after his death was, "I feel I no longer fit with these times," which I think he says like 2 weeks after his death. It's incredible, to be quite honest with you. One of the greatest presidents, I think, in the history of this country. He's one of like literally 5 presidents that have actually ever run for office that I actually love, adore, and I think really, really, truly deserve the actual, like, one that I don't even think he wanted to become president. He just, okay, I guess I'll do it if you want me to. Might as well, okay. Whoa. We're gonna get 5? Ooh, okay. Let's do it.
Still no sign of venom. Parker boy really came through.
That's Calvin Coolidge, one of my favorite presidents. Again, he's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Do not get it twisted, or don't get me wrong, but I think it's fair to say if you want to find someone who did his due diligence, that tried to be like George Washington objectively and do the things that his constituencies want, a good man, you're not going to find really anyone better than Calvin Coolidge. I think the only drawback that a lot of people will try to besmirch Calvin Coolidge is the fact that the Great Depression does happen right after his presidency. I think that's more of an attributable to, one, people, how do I put it? It's partially his fault. It's also partially not his fault. I think the Federal Reserve, because of their monetary policies, because it's really wacky in terms of how they control things and how they control the money supply. It can go up and down, and I think they tend to over leverage because he has no control over that specifically at that time. It's not really his fault that the economy tanked in that way because he specifically has no control or influence. And to me, it just seems like the economy's doing good. The Federal Reserve is just going to keep pumping money out there. And I think they just overdid it because they overthought that the government... So can I change the heroes then? Yeah, okay. Cool. 2 separate squads. But, and I think they just overvalued what was actually happening, almost to a very dangerous degree, which led to the economic collapse that would be the Great Depression eventually. And it's also not his fault too that, but it's also partially his fault too because one could argue the deregulation of certain businesses led to a lot of real finicky things happening. Helped a lot of the small guys, but it also helped a lot of the big guys who would take advantage of the small guys. And then it could be like a compounding effect where it's like, big business takes over and a bunch of small businesses fail in that particular area and place. And then next thing you know, it's like, a lot of people aren't doing as well as they probably should and could. And people just overspend, overlend, and I also think it's because it's the Roaring '20s. People are having fun. It's post World War One, post Spanish flu, post everything. It's this new world that we're living in, and people want all the things. And you could say the bad aspects of prohibition, the bad aspects of general life around that particular point in time. They want good things, and they're probably just overspending their credit cards a little too much. It's also helped too that they're not paying as many taxes as they should too. That's just my 2 cents on it. You can blame him. Sure. Enemy reinforcements. What? Okay. So I think there are fair criticisms, but I would probably counter that there are other reasons, ultimately, that I think determined more in the country than just what ultimately ends up happening. That was a mouthful. It's not just him is ultimately the point I'm trying to get. It's more than that. And that's Calvin Coolidge. One of my favorite presidents of all time, and one that I think deserves the utmost true respect, I would probably say. Now we're going to talk about, very briefly in this opening, about Mr. Herbert Hoover,
Hydra sure does get around.
who has a lot of health.
They don't have a level
66. Oh, he's camouflaged. That's what it is. I can put you... Oops. Here. Haven't seen this guy in a while. I'm not gonna get shot. I don't care if it's overkill.
interesting.
Herbert Hoover is the 31st president of the United States. A very complicated president. Certainly, I don't think one suited for the times that he, unfortunately, ends up becoming president. I do believe if he was president during any other years other than the Great Depression, like, he just wasn't the guy. Not to be rude, that's just the only way I could probably put it. He probably would have been a lot better had it literally not been the Great Depression, but it's one of those just difficult things that you kind of have to, historically it's just going to be part of his legacy.
It's almost a shame Stark and the Doctor aren't here to see their little project in action. The Faithbreaker will finally purge Venom's foul corruption from the Sanctum and the city.
Time's up for these chumps.
You asked for it.
I do wonder if Herbert Hoover wasn't the president or the Great Depression didn't happen, how his legacy would be affected. Because I do believe he would have been a little bit better. But I also don't know if... Oh, God. I think I'm gonna... Yeah, this is not a good situation. I gotta start murking these people. Because he's one where I think if things just happen a little different, I think his entire career, his legacy turns out very differently. But people mainly just remember him for the Great Depression and Hoovervilles, all that jazz, you know. Oof. Is it death? It's not good. Yep, it's death. Gosh. Guys, I'm probably going to have to restart this level. My goodness.
It's too bad those gloves won't work for anyone else. We'd love to see Carol, Captain Marvel, knock those tendrils of Sakaar.
Aw, Blade. Such a sweet talker.
For now, meet the Faith Breakers and me.
I owe you one.
Time for some payback.
Okay, I'm gonna have to play a little defense right now.
No retreat.
I think they like me.
To the dome, bro.
Ouch. I hope you learned your lesson.
But let's just get into it. Hoover was born a couple years after Calvin Coolidge, late or mid 1870s, in Iowa. He was born in Iowa, but I think he lived in Oregon. His dad was a blacksmith, wanted him to become a blacksmith too, but you know the times are changing. His nickname when he was younger, I think, was Birdie. I don't know why I find that funny. Just why Birdie. Raised very, very, very religious. His family, because his family were part of the whole Quakers. Which one should I do? Yeah, I'll just do this. He had the croup when he was a kid. They thought he died, actually, when he was younger at one point. But very intelligent young man. Attended school. Read a lot. Not books, but like he read the Bible a lot, like every day. Come on. And a forceful knockback. I will take that.
You had your chance to escape. Hail that.
Oh God. Okay.
Keep trying. Maybe you'll get lucky.
Unfortunately, because you know it's Midwest Quakers. Unfortunately for him, he's one of like 4 kids, I think. Both his parents died really young. I think he's 10 when they both die. Unfortunately for... Where's Blade at? Because of that, he and his brothers and sisters go and live with I think their aunt and uncle in Oregon. To bleed. Now you're bleeding. Do some damage that way. Don't need the lifesteal though. Long story short, he just hated Oregon because, you know, very, very rural areas, and at that point, and really just hated chores. But he never walked away from it. He was always had a pretty strong work ethic. A lot of people saw that. And he was a good young industrious man because of his religious upbringing, a whole bunch of different things. What the? Yeah, take that, guy. Okay, forceful knockback. Move it here. One, two, three. Of course, he's in a frenzy. Now, he didn't like school, though. He was educated, but he did not like school. Ends up doing most of his teenage years just working, doing chores, etc., etc. Does attend night school and, you know, gets the equivalency, I guess, of like a GED. Registers for college. I believe he is of Stanford University's inaugural class. Ugh, you know, tongue-tied. Blade at. Probably overkill. Not a good student, but he did find ultimately his calling in a lot of ways. He was a big fan of mathematics, mechanical engineering, geology, things that would really influence his future. Big into sports too. Big fan of football, baseball. Is a big influencer in like making sports prominent at Stanford University, which, you know, Andrew Luck came from there, so I mean, just saying, you know. But he graduates during Grover Cleveland's term as president, where there's a bit of an economic issue going on in the country. There was a panic of 1893, as I had detailed previously, and he struggles initially to find a job, works low-end jobs until he finds a position in so he finds a position in the Sierra Nevada mountains as a miner. Purge this symbiote. Eventually, he was hired by this mining company based in London, I think, that worked and operated on gold mines. Got paid a lot, made a lot of money, and he went all over the place to basically, do his job properly. Specifically in Australia, he showed real chops being in charge of a lot of people. He showed that when he was a miner, organizing a bunch of things. He showed that he was a very hyper efficient individual. Always the corporate man, I'll put it that way. I mean, that company ended up getting pretty big. I don't know what happened specifically, but they ended up controlling a lot of Australia's gold reserves and gold production. Very anti-labor. I will just point that out as a funny little aside. And that's done with.
I think they can arrest you for that in New York, Blade. Yep, that'll make them hate you.
Damn it. But he goes everywhere. Australia, the Far East, specifically China. I mean, he's actually there during the Boxer Rebellion in China, mind you, which that's a very fascinating historical event. I mean, that was bad. It was basically just the Chinese government falling under complete pure unrest, that the government was about to, like, fall on its face. Ends up becoming a partner within the company eventually, and ends up where is the guy? Is this guy? Okay. Basically, he ends up trying to venture out on his own. Works for other different mining operations. Basically just became like a contractor. Just whoever needs assistance in this, and this, I'll help you with that. Yada yada yada. Booyah. That's how we do. And he became a mogul, dude. He ended up investing in various different countries all across the world. Basically by Woodrow Wilson's term as president in 1914, he had amassed like $4 to $5 million, which today he's literally, it's worth, I think, probably closer to like almost $150 million in today's money. Just to put that in perspective, I mean, this guy's like a big mogul. Founded a bunch of different companies. He was big into zinc. Was a big had a bunch of zinc mines, extracted them, and again, he was really big, industrious, and I think very prominent in his financial push for a lot of these things. I mean, he's everywhere. There's a reason why he's the presidential candidate for the Republican Party at that point, and then is a vice presidential candidate, or not a part of Calvin Coolidge's term as president, a part of his cabinet. He's everywhere, dude. All the while, too, he's writing. He's doing writing books on mining. And you see change in his perspective, being a company man and being for big business and corporations, to being much more of a progressive individual. He went from being like, I don't like 8-hour work days, to being like, I think that has to be the standard now. And, yeah, it just, everything changes, you know? Just fantastic for him. I forgot to point out, too, he also gets married right after college. He meets a lady named Lou. She was the daughter of a banker, and I don't think the father of Lou wanted him to marry her because he wasn't rich or wealthy or well off and could support his daughter. But after earning a lot of money, he ends up calling her and was like, "What's up, girl? How you doing?" They get married in, I think, 1899 or 1900, and pretty much get married until her death in the 1940s. Mistakes from summoning Lilin, attacking, defending enemies to break protection. Okay. Okay. You know what? I'm going to stop this part right here because I think this is going to be well over an hour. Like and subscribe. We'll continue pretty soon, pretty shortly, guys. Y'all rock. God bless. Have a good one.